How's it going? Ash here with Gents. How are you, friends? I want to talk to you guys about some fragrances today that are timeless, in my opinion. Or by timeless, I mean at least for the next 2 decades, give or take. These are fragrances that I think even 20 years from now are still gonna smell awesome, which is really not that far of a stretch for some really good solid scents, because there are people out there still happily wearing fragrances from like 70 years ago that are still working. So I think 20 years that's fine. Got a great mix here. Niche, designer, you know the drill. Let's jump into it. Let's check these guys out. I'll have each one of these linked in the description below. And also guys, code time, twistedlily.com. Gents10 is the code, 10% off your order for anything on the website. They sell niche fragrances at retail. Unless you use 10% off code, then it's 90% of retail. JomoShop.com, use the code GENTS8, save yourself $8 off any order over $110. They are not a retailer, they are a discounter, and they have all kinds of fragrances, designer and niche. Fragrance number 1 kicking us off today in style is from Tom Ford. So you know it's pricey, but it smells great, and it really set the tone for this style of fragrance for many years to come. Tuscan Leather. It's made leather fragrances cool again. It has raspberry, leather, saffron, and olibanum as some of the notes in the fragrance. And I couldn't even tell you how many scents that came out after Tuscan Leather are heavily inspired by Tuscan Leather. It's like a prerequisite almost for niche houses that they have to have something that smells a bit like Tuscan Leather. Even Tom Ford, who made Tuscan Leather, was like, hey, let's revisit that with ombre leather. It doesn't smell exactly like Tuscan Leather, but it's not super far removed. So of course, I think 20 years from now, Tuscan Leather is still gonna work just as well as it does today, assuming that it doesn't get unceremoniously discontinued. But to be fair, that's the case for all of these. There's really not much of a drawback for Tuscan Leather for me personally. I know some people, they think it's a bit too much, too aggressive, but I really enjoy it. And that big punch of performance, I like that because it's expensive as crap, man. So if I'm paying a lot of money for it, I kind of dig it. It's a bummer when you pay a ton of money for a fragrance and then it lasts like 15 minutes. No thanks. Next up is the fragrance that we all know and love, or possibly hate, from the house of Creed, Aventus. Now, one thing you'll notice in this list is I'm not leaning heavily into what's popping right now, like what's really popular in men's fragrances, like the trends. I'm not going into that quite as much. I'm leaning more on fragrances here that I think are, like the name of the video would imply, are a little more timeless. Not that Aventus is not popular, because it absolutely is, but you get what I'm saying. Pineapple, birch, blackcurrant, and musk, some of the notes in the fragrance. Some people would say this is the king of men's fragrances. It's definitely the most popular niche fragrance. We know that much for sure. The versatility of Aventus is through the roof. This is a fragrance you can wear any place, anytime, and it will work in classy situations. You're good. Date night, you're good. The office, you're good. Anywhere, you're good. But with that popularity does come a bit of a blowback, you know, people saying, oh, it's overpriced, it's not good for how much you have to pay for the stuff, and the batch variations are lame, the perfumers that were credited for this are not actually the perfumers of it. Oh wait, that last thing is completely true, but that's okay, it's fixed now. Go check out the Ghost Perfumer. Or Google it, whatever, it'll pull up stuff. Yeah, Creed Aventus, regardless of any of the bad stuff that goes along with it, the bad juju, that fragrance is still gonna rock 20 years from now. And you know they're gonna be squeezing every last penny out of it that they can. After that one, let's talk about Dolce & Gabbana's the One Eau de Parfum. I love the way this stuff smells. I always will. I could go a year and a half on this channel without talking about it, and I'll bring it up again and just go, oh, so good. It really is like a weird obsession I have with this stuff. I love the scent. Amber, tobacco, ginger, cardamom, grapefruit, some of the notes in the fragrance. Warm, spicy, sexy, fantastic date night scent, great compliment pulling fragrance. The performance on it is not absolutely stunning or anything, but it's good enough to get the job done. One of my favorite designer smells ever, the One Eau de Parfum. That's gonna smell good 50 years from now, 100 years from now. After that one, Frederic Malle, Musc. Ravageur. Now this one is gonna work 20 years from now because even today, it smells like a classic style fragrance. If it already smells classic, what's it gonna do? Get more classicer? Wow, that fragrance was classic and it was good when it was just classic, but when it became classicer, nah, that's lame. Cinnamon, cloves, lavender, musk, of course, it's in the name, and vanilla, some of the notes in the fragrance. This one has a really warming scent profile to me, so when I spray it on my skin and I catch a big whiff of it, it's like it almost warms me up, like I'm drinking hot cocoa or something. Not that this smells like cocoa, but it has a similar effect. And it's because the cinnamon and the cloves here just work together so perfectly with that slightly dusty vanilla, giving you a hint of sweetness, and that musk giving you just the faintest animalic touch to the scent. Works together perfectly. This stuff is fantastic. It may be an acquired taste, or you may never acquire the taste, but I still think that one is gonna work just as well in the future as it does today. Let's keep it going with some more classic stuff. Guerlain Vetiver next up. Great price from discounters for this one typically. Doesn't cost all that much, and the quality as far as designer style Vetivers is very high. It is going to be a little bit more throwbackish as compared to something like Grey Vetiver from Tom Ford, but I think that gives it maybe a little more personality. So of course you do have that vetiver in here. It's the name of the fragrance. If it didn't have vetiver, that would be weird. There's also tobacco in here. There's citrus, there's pepper, there's carnation, among other notes. I bring up carnation because anytime I can, I like to bring that note up. When I was a kid, it was my favorite flower. Then I got older and realized it was in all the men's fragrances from the 80s and before. And now it's like nowhere. That one may appeal more to guys middle-aged and older, but the versatility is there, and 20 years from now, it's still gonna work. All right, now this next one is a complete departure from the last two fragrances. It's Mont Blanc's Legend. Now I know what you're saying to yourself. I know you're saying, hey man, Legend, that's just Mont Blanc's take on Fierce. You could have just used Fierce. And I would say to that, first off, you're right. Second off, I didn't want to look at the Fierce bottle and have that dude pulling his pants down on my face again. I've been accosted by the Fierce guy pulling his pants down enough, okay? Legend, it doesn't do that to me. Legend respects boundaries. Also though, Legend is more affordable than Fierce, and for a lot of people, would probably be their choice over Fierce, even if Fierce came first and Fierce was the trendsetter. So this has lavender, has pineapple, has apple, has tonka. It's again, massively versatile. Use it just about anywhere, anytime. And even though Fierce is the type of fragrance that a lot of people would think of as more youthful leaning, Legend, I think just about anybody could pull off, though maybe it would overall lean more toward guys middle-aged and younger. Great fragrance, great price, and that DNA has shown its ability to stick around and still work. So I think it'll still work in the future as well. After that, a great Dior release. Really nice stuff. Fahrenheit Le Parfum. Violet leaf, rum, vanilla, and suede. Now, of course, the original Fahrenheit Eau de Toilette, that's still out. So, I mean, that's still working decades later. Why not this? It's a little bit easier for people nowadays to pull off Fahrenheit Le Parfum than the original Fahrenheit because of the added sweetness in here from vanilla and rum. Still has a suede leather. You have violet leaf in here, so you have a touch of that petrol. Not as much as in the original Fahrenheit though. It is pricier than the original Fahrenheit, harder to find than the original Fahrenheit, but it is a great, great fragrance that I think will stand the test of time. Next up, Andy Tower, LDDM, L'air du Desert, Marocain. I'm not even trying to do the French and the correct pronunciation because it just comes out butchered and sounding weird. Amber, cedar, coriander, vetiver, cumin, some of the notes in this fragrance. This is one of those fragrances I like to just pull off the shelf and spray it on myself when I'm staying home for the day, or even just spray onto a tester strip and carry it around like I'm a person with mental problems. Like I'm just walking around my house. Oh man, it's one of those transportive fragrances. You smell it and it's like you get warped to a different place. The warm, rich spices from the fragrance just always capture my attention. The type of scent that if I ever smelled it in public on another person, which I haven't yet, but if I did, I would whip my head so fast that I'd get just like a crick in my neck. It's hard to go after that one, frankly, because I think that's really one of my favorite fragrances of all time, just in terms of how it smells. But trying to follow that one, man, I'm still picking it up. I threw that tester strip on the floor and it's coming up underneath the desk. Anyway, Following up after that, Pasha de Cartier Parfum. It's giving its best, it's trying its best to follow up here. Sandalwood, liquor, balsam fir, and benzoin, some of the notes in the fragrance. It has a similarity to the original Pasha de Cartier Eau de Toilette, which is not a surprise because this is a Pasha de Cartier after all. So it has this slight throwback barbershop feel to it, this old school, classic, gentlemanly nature to the fragrance. Only this one modernized and given this resinous warmth and woodiness that sits underneath that original DNA. Or maybe it's more like the original DNA sits underneath that. The fragrance is wonderful, the quality is good, and even if it's sometimes a little bit expensive at discounters as compared to what some other designer fragrances would run, I think it's worth it. This stuff is great. And that one, again, is gonna be one of those timeless fragrances because it has that timeless masculine scent DNA worked into it. Where when you smell it today, you might already think, wow, it's kind of a classic, isn't it? Well, in a way, and in 20 years, it still will be. Last but not least, Spicebomb Extreme, Viktor and Rolf. Now with this one, maybe 20 years from now, very spicy fragrances with sweetness and dark woods in them. Maybe they're not really popular at all, and maybe it doesn't work as well in the future as it does nowadays, but I'm willing to bet that it will. It has great performance, which you would expect from a spice bomb, especially one named Extreme and shaped like a hand grenade. Have a fragrance like this come out and sprayed on and it's weaker than piss. That would just destroy your ability to trust ever again. But thankfully, Viktor and Rolf did not do us dirty on this one. So thanks, V&R. What really sets this one apart for me from the original is that black vanilla. Yeah, that bit of sweetness takes the edge up. And the spice that's in here is not quite as nose tingling as in the original, which makes it easier to pull off. Spicebomb Extreme. Still gonna work. There we go, guys. 10 timeless fragrances that I believe will still work just as well in 20 years as today. Oftentimes, the only fragrances, at least that I end up smelling, that come across a little iffy in the future are fragrances that were maybe too trend specific for the time that they were released. And once that trend is no longer popular, the fragrance just kind of wilts. All right, guys, let me know in the comments some fragrances that you think personally are going to be timeless 20 years from now. Thank you for hanging with me. Thanks for your support. Stay safe out there, guys. You know, I will see you tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys later.